I vanished from my old town for 3 months. Not one person from my family sent a single, "You good?" text. Then my aunt posted a harmless decor goals picture. Only it showed the distinct railing and the exact location of my new apartment. Within 24 hours, the entire family descended with gifts, tears, and rescue plans that felt rehearsed. I thought they missed me. I realized they'd appraised me. That night, I found the thread that unraveled the whole setup. My name is Riley Northwood. I am 31 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I live alone. Professionally, I am an operations manager for Blue Canyon Freight. My entire job revolves around complex systems, predictive modeling, and ensuring that $1 million piece of specialized medical equipment leaving Germany arrives in Seattle on time, intact, and without incurring a single customs delay. I am precise. I am competent. At my office in West Haven, when I speak, people listen, because my analysis is backed by data and a track record of being right. I solve intricate problems for a living. At home, or what used to be home, I was simply the solution to cash flow problems. For almost a decade, I was the designated family bank. It's a quiet, insidious title. It doesn't happen overnight. It starts with, "Riley, can you cover me until Friday?" When I got my first job, it evolves into, "Your cousin Candace needs her transmission fixed. You're doing so well. You should help." It metastasizes into my mother co-signing me onto her utility bills without my permission, just in case. Which really meant, so my credit would absorb the hit when she paid late. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who always had her head on straight, which, in my family's dialect, meant the one with a steady paycheck and a poor grasp of boundaries. The decision to leave Maple Ridge wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was the quiet, slow death of 1,000 paper cuts. It was the realization that my phone only ever rang with a request, never a simple hello. It was the crushing weight, every time I walked into my old apartment, of knowing someone would drop by needing something, gas money, a place to crash, a sympathetic ear that was really just an open wallet. So I saved, in secret, in a bank account they didn't know existed. I planned my extraction with the same meticulous precision I use for a high-value freight manifest. I found a new position at the West Haven terminal, a transfer within Blue Canyon. I found the apartment building, and one Tuesday in April, I moved. I didn't tell them I was leaving. I just left. My new home is Harbor Heights. It's a sterile name, but the place is anything but. It's a one-bedroom apartment, just over 700 square feet. The light is what sold me. The living room faces east, looking out over the bay, and in the morning, the entire space is flooded with clean, bright light that makes the hardwood floors glow. I have a small balcony, just big enough for a chair and 2 pots of lavender. I can see the massive container ships, my ships, gliding silently toward the port. Every single thing inside these 4 walls, from the sofa to the silverware to the mattress I sleep on, was paid for by me, for me. The first night I spent here, I ordered a pizza, ate it on the floor because I hadn't bought a table, and I cried, not from sadness. It was the overwhelming, paralyzing, exhilarating feeling of silence, the feeling of a lock on the door that only I had the key for. My new rule was simple. I would cut the circle. I would stop being the first responder to every manufactured crisis. This wasn't just about money. It was about the transaction. The love I received was always conditional. A preface to an invoice, I was done paying it. The silence that followed was deafening, and it proved my point more than any argument ever could. It has been 3 months, 90 days. Not one person from my immediate family has my new address. Not one. I didn't block their numbers. I simply stopped initiating. I stopped being the glue. The family group chat. Northwood Collective is a scrolling testament to my absence. I watch it like a scientist observing a petri dish. My name is never mentioned. The chatter is incessant. Cousin Candace is planning her wedding, and the links to her registry are posted daily. My uncle is talking about a new miracle supplement. My Aunt Marla is showing off her new patio furniture, and then the messages that used to be directed at me, privately, are now just thrown into the void, hoping someone catches them. Things are tight this month. Can't believe the electric bill. Has anyone transferred Mom the money for her prescription? I am invisible. I was never Riley. I was an asset. And now that the asset is off the books, I cease to exist. This quiet is expensive. It cost me my entire family. But it's also the first thing I've ever owned that is truly mine. I started therapy. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone. The guilt is a claw-footed beast that tries to drag me back. Dr. Alvarez is patient. Her office is soundproof. And she doesn't let me get away with minimizing my own experience. A boundary is not an act of aggression, Riley, she told me in our second week. It is an act of self-preservation. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. We are working on soft but clear boundaries. We are working on the guilt. We are working on the fact that I spent my entire 20s believing my only value was financial. My new life is aggressively simple, minimalist, not by trend, but by necessity. I need less noise. I wake up at 5:30, before the sun, and I run along the harbor. The air is cold and smells of salt and diesel. I come home. I make 1 cup of coffee. I go to work and I excel. I come home, and the apartment is exactly as I left it. Clean, quiet. My dinners are simple. A bowl of soup, an omelet. The sheer luxury of cooking for one is something I will never take for granted. On weekends, I am learning to make pottery. It's the opposite of my job. It's slow, tactile, and messy. There is no efficiency, only focus. The feeling of wet clay spinning under my hands is the most grounding sensation I've ever known. The first thing I did when I moved in, before I even bought a sofa, was install a new security system. A smart lock with a keypad and a high-definition video camera for the doorway. It's not because I'm afraid of West Haven. I'm not. It's because I'm terrified of Maple Ridge. The old, open-door policy at my mother's house was a violation disguised as warmth. People walking in without knocking, borrowing things that were never returned. The complete and total erosion of a private self. My smart lock is my perimeter. My camera is my sentry. Dr. Alvarez says this isn't paranoia. It's a trauma response. I just call it peace of mind. I have a spreadsheet. I am an operations manager. After all, one column is my average monthly spending in Maple Ridge. The other is my current spending. The line item that used to be labeled family support. A catch-all for the emergency payments. The loans that were never repaid, the covered bills, is now gone. In its place is a new line item. Savings. I am actually saving money. A real emergency fund, a vacation fund. I am saving for a future that doesn't involve bailing anyone else out. But the old ghosts are loud. I'll be standing at my window, watching the ships, and my mother's voice will surface, sharp and clear as if she were in the room. It's from a fight we had 2 years ago, when I refused to co-sign a car loan for my cousin. "You need to be useful, Riley," she had hissed at me. "It's the only way you'll keep people around. You're only valuable when you're paying." I write these things down in the notebook I use for therapy. I have to get them out of my head, to prove they are just echoes, not a diagnosis. Last week, I wrote a letter. It's on a single sheet of paper, folded in my journal. It's addressed to my family, but I will never send it. It's not for them, it's for me. A final closing of the books. It consists of 1 sentence. I need to be loved when I'm not paying. I folded the paper and closed the journal. The silence in my apartment felt like an answer. It was a Thursday, 10:04 in the morning. I was on my mandated 15-minute break, sitting at my desk overlooking the West Haven terminal, watching a crane lift a 40-foot container onto a chassis. My work phone was on the desk. My personal phone was in my hand. The coffee was lukewarm. It was a perfectly normal, quiet, structured moment in my new, structured life. I was scrolling. That mindless digital thumb stretch we all do. I follow a few design blogs, some pottery accounts, and, out of a lingering, morbid habit, my Aunt Marla. Marla is my mother's older sister. Her entire identity is curated. She is a woman who believes presentation is everything, which usually meant her home was spotless. Her children's Christmas photos were professionally lit, and her personal finances were a gaping sinkhole hidden by new throw pillows. Her social media feed is an endless beige-filtered stream of decor tips, recipes she's never cooked, and inspirational quotes about family. She's the matriarch of the Northwood Collective chat, the one who always laments how we don't get together enough, while simultaneously keeping a mental ledger of who owed who what. A new post appeared. The caption was "Saccharine Sweet, Vintage Marla. Just loving my niece's dream balcony corner. She has such an eye for cozy details." I read the words, but my brain couldn't parse them. Niece? I'm her only niece who lives in this state. But Marla has never been to my apartment. She doesn't know where I live. Then I saw the photo. My blood didn't just run cold, it evaporated. It was a close-up shot, artfully angled. It showed a small black bistro chair, a terracotta pot with blooming lavender, and the railing. The post was a visual gut punch. My throat tightened. That wasn't just a bistro chair. It was the one I'd spent 2 weeks tracking down at an online estate sale. That wasn't just a pot of lavender. It was the one I'd replanted last Saturday. The one I'd almost killed and proudly brought back. And the railing. Oh God, the railing. It wasn't the standard wrought iron. Harbor Heights prided itself on its unique architectural flourishes, which meant the balconies were separated by thick, frosted glass panels and topped with a flat, brushed aluminum railing that was cool to the touch, even in the sun. I stared at the photo, my thumb hovering over the screen. It was my railing. It was my chair. It was my lavender. The caption said, "My nieces." My vision tunneled. I started to shake, a low-frequency tremor that began in my stomach. Marla has never been here. I have not seen Marla in 4 months. I have not spoken to her, outside of a happy birthday text in the group chat, in 93 days. How? My operations brain took over. The part of me that tracks high-value cargo through hostile territory went online. Emotion receded, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged analysis. I needed to verify the data. I minimized the app and opened my phone's photo gallery. I went to the folder from the day I moved in. I had taken a picture of the balcony to send to... Well, I realized I hadn't sent it to anyone. I had just taken it for myself. I put the 2 images side by side, my photo and Marla's. It was a perfect match, not just similar, identical. My photo was taken from inside the apartment, looking out. Marla's was taken from the balcony, looking at the chair. She was standing where I stand every morning. I zoomed in on Marla's photo, my fingers spreading the image until it pixelated. The detective angle. She'd called it. She was trying to be artistic. She had captured the reflection in the sliding glass door behind the chair. My heart hammered against my ribs. Once, twice. Reflected in the glass, distorted but undeniable, was the interior of my apartment. I could see the edge of my gray sofa, and next to it, on the wall, the bright red casing of the building's mandatory fire extinguisher. It was mounted right next to the sliding door. In my photo, I could read the serial number on the inspection tag. In Marla's photo, the numbers were backward, warped by the glass, but the sequence was there. My eyes darted from my photo to hers, matching the digits, 616J4. It was my apartment. I scrolled back to Marla's post. The geotag was turned off. Of course it was. Marla is savvy enough to hide her tracks, but she's not an operations manager. She's an amateur. She hadn't just captured the reflection of the inside. She had captured the view. Through the gaps in the lavender, in the sliver of the outside world visible beyond my railing, was the West Haven skyline, and reflected on the aluminum of the railing itself, a tiny bright point of light. I zoomed in again. The light wasn't a sun flare. It was the neon sign from the Yokohama sushi restaurant. It sits on top of the old Port Tower building, across the bay. It's famous, and from my specific vantage point on the 7th floor, at this exact angle, It's the only neon sign visible during the day. She had just given me a full, verifiable set of coordinates. She had posted my location. She had posted my home. A new, hotter feeling replaced the cold. It was rage. Pure, clean, unfiltered rage. But the question remained. The core operational problem. Who let her in? My smart lock is a fortress. There is no keyhole to pick. The keypad requires a 6-digit code that only I know. The biometric scanner is tuned to my thumbprint. I am the only person with access. My mind raced. I closed the social media app. I opened my calendar. I started scrolling backward. When could this have happened? I am always here, or at work. I don't go out. My new life is a closed loop. Wait. Last week? Tuesday. I clicked on my email. I searched Harbor Heights. There it was, an email from Harbor Heights Management, sent 9 days ago. Subject: Mandatory Annual Duct Inspection. Dear residents, on Tuesday, October 28th, our maintenance partners will be conducting mandatory inspections of the HVAC ductwork. Access will be required to all units between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Residents are not required to be present. Our building manager will accompany the technicians with a master key fob. October 28th. I was at work. No, I was on a double. I was at the terminal from 8 a.m. until nearly 10 p.m. A container of pharmaceuticals from Switzerland had been flagged by customs, and I had to personally oversee the inspection and release. I wasn't home for a single minute of the maintenance window. My new sanctuary, my fortress. Its one vulnerability was the master key. I opened my security app. My system is simple. The smart lock on the door and the video doorbell. That's what I'd focused on. The entry. I checked the video doorbell log for October 28th. Nothing. No alerts, no unrecognized faces, no motion detected at the threshold. This meant they didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They just came in. But the lock itself is smart. It logs everything. I switched from the video feed to the access log. 9:02 a.m. Door unlocked by Riley Northwood. Me, leaving for work. 9:03 a.m. Door locked. 2:17 p.m. Door unlocked by admin fob. User. HHM. Master. 2:34 p.m. Door locked by admin fob. User. HHM Mosh Master. 9:58 p.m. Door unlocked by Riley Northwood. Me, coming home. 17 minutes. They were inside my home for 17 minutes. My breath hitched. The app also has a log for the small, passive motion sensor I'd placed on the bookshelf in the living room. I barely check it. It's just part of the package. I opened its log. 2:17 p.m. Motion detected. Living room. 2:18 p.m. Motion detected. Living room. 2:19 p.m. Motion detected. Living room. 2:20 p.m. Motion detected. Living room. The log continued, uninterrupted, until 2:33 p.m. The technicians were supposed to be checking the HVAC duct. The vent is in the ceiling of the short hallway by the front door. There is no reason for them to have been in the living room. There is certainly no reason for them to have been on my balcony. I set my coffee cup down. My hand was so steady it looked alien. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the extension for my building's front desk. A cheerful voice answered. Harbor Heights? This is Marco speaking. Hi, Marco. This is Riley Northwood in 708, I said. My voice was level, calm, the voice I use for difficult clients. I have a quick security question for you. I'm reviewing the log for the maintenance inspection last Tuesday, October 28th. Oh yes, Ms. Northwood, the duct cleaning. Hope everything was in order. It was. I'm just auditing my logs, and I see the master fob was used at 2:17 p.m. Could you do me a favor and check your visitor log for that entry? My security app doesn't show who the fob was assigned to. Not a problem, he said. I heard typing. Here we are. Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. Unit 708. Okay. That entry was for the maintenance crew. They were escorted by our building manager, as per policy. I understand, I said. Does your log show who was in the party? Yes, it does. It was 2 technicians from Allied Ducks, and, oh, it looks like they had a visitor with them. That's unusual. I said nothing. I let the silence hang. Marco continued. Yeah, it says here the resident's cousin was here to meet them, to supervise. My stomach dropped. Cousin? Does it list a name? Yes, he said, and I could hear the rustle of a paper log being checked against the digital one. The technicians were signed in by the manager, but the visitor was signed in separately. She had to show ID. It's right here. A Ms. Candace Northwood. She was registered for a family visit to your unit. Candace. My cousin Candace, the one planning her wedding, the one who always needed money for a deposit, for a car repair, for a new dress for a job interview she never seemed to get, the one I had cut off first. She was signed in at 2:15 p.m., Marco said, and signed out at 2:35 p.m., right with the maintenance crew. 17 minutes. Ms. Northwood, is that a problem? I closed my eyes. I saw the picture, the lavender, the railing, the reflection, the geotag. I saw the plan, laid out like one of my freight manifests. It wasn't an accident. It was an operation. No, Marco, I said, my voice perfectly even. That's not a problem at all. You've been incredibly helpful. Thank you. I hung up the phone. I sat at my desk for a full minute. The crane outside had stopped moving. The terminal was quiet. Then, I picked up my personal phone. I went to the post. I screenshotted the picture. I screenshotted the caption. I went to my security app. I screenshotted the lock log showing the admin fob. I screenshotted the 17-minute-long motion sensor log. I went to my email and screenshotted the maintenance notification from management. I saved them all to a secure folder in my cloud. I titled the folder Breach. Aunt Marla posted the photo, but Candace opened the door. They hadn't just found me. They had coordinated. They had trespassed. They had invaded. The cold, analytical calm began to crack, and the rage returned. But this time it was different. It was hot, and it was focused. I finally understood. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my life. They wanted access. And they had just confirmed, in a single, stupid, beige-filtered photo, that I was right to be afraid. It was as if a dam had broken, a digital, cloying, saccharine-sweet dam. For 3 solid months, my phone had been a pocket-sized rectangle of peace, a tool I used for navigation, for my pottery class schedule, for work. Now, it was a live grenade. The moment Marla's post gained traction, I could almost see the Northwood Collective chat lighting up, one person after another seeing it, the digital whispers turning into a roar. My screen started flashing. It didn't just vibrate, it rattled on the surface of my desk at the terminal, a violent, insistent buzz that was completely alien. I looked down. The lock screen was a waterfall of notifications, scrolling past faster than I could read. Aunt Marla was first. A direct message. Sweetheart, just had to share how proud I am of you. That balcony is just to die for. I'm thinking of doing a whole series on small space sanctuaries. Your place is the perfect inspiration. So happy you're settled. We must celebrate. A text from my mother. 5 seconds later. Riley, your aunt showed me the picture. A very nice window. You must be paying a lot. It is traditional to have a housewarming for luck. A new home needs red envelopes to bless it. I have made a list of the things you will need to prepare for us when we come. A list followed, not a list of things they would bring, but a list of things I was to provide. Good quality tea. A whole roasted chicken. From the good deli, not the supermarket. New slippers for all guests, and cash for the envelopes. The audacity was so pure, so refined. It was almost beautiful. It wasn't, I'll bring the envelopes. It was, you will provide the cash for the envelopes that we will then present back to you as luck, a self-funding airdrop of manufactured tradition. Then, Uncle Bryce, my mother's brother, his text was blunt, all business. Riley, see you moved up. Good for you. That area is high-end. Listen, I saw a great deal on a 60-inch television. High def. All the apps. I know you'll need one for that big wall I saw. I can pick it up for you. Get you my corporate discount. It's a steal at $900. Just send me the money now before the sale ends, and I'll drop it off. My eyes narrowed. That big wall I saw? How would he know about a big wall? Marla's photo was a tight shot of a chair. I didn't have time to process before the next one landed. It was Candace, the infiltrator. Her tone was, as always, a performance of breezy, overwhelmed affection. Riley! Oh my God! Your new place is so cute! Seriously, I'm obsessed. That view? Killer. Listen, quick favor. You're in a secure building now, which is amazing. So much safer than my place. I need to order a few things. Just some small stuff for the wedding, and I'm terrified they'll get swiped from my porch. Would you be a total lifesaver and let me use your address for a few deliveries? Just for a little while? You'll be home from work to get them, right? My stomach turned. A secure building. Using my address. It wasn't a request. It was a tactical move. She was testing the perimeter, seeing what access her initial reconnaissance had bought her. I sat back in my chair. The terminal outside, with its massive, impersonal machinery, suddenly felt like the only sane place in the world. This wasn't just an onslaught of affection. This was a coordinated attack. This was the second wave. The first wave, Candace and Marla, had secured the beachhead. Now, the rest of the army was landing, and they were all coming with invoices. They were all so comfortable, so familiar. Aunt Marla texted again, not even waiting for a reply to her first message. By the way, where did you get that adorable little espresso machine, the red one? I couldn't get a good angle on it from the balcony. It's tucked away too neatly by the fridge. I'll need to get a better shot for the blog when I come. What's your schedule look like next Saturday? I'll bring my good camera. The red one, tucked away too neatly by the fridge. My espresso machine is a small, fire engine red Nespresso I bought on clearance. It sits in a tiny alcove between my refrigerator and the pantry. It is completely, totally, 100% invisible from the balcony. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was the vibrating hum of the engine in my head shifting into a higher gear. They hadn't just been on the balcony. Candace hadn't just let Marla in to snap a photo of a chair. They had done a walkthrough. They had been in my kitchen. They had been in my living room. They had assessed my big wall. They had cataloged my appliances. They had, in 17 minutes, done a full inventory of my new life, and now they were texting me the price list. I opened the Northwood Collective group chat. The photo was there, posted by Marla for everyone to see. The comments were a flurry of heart eyes and clapping emojis. Our girl is doing so well. Looks expensive. When's the party? I took a deep breath. I typed. My message was simple. It's a nice place. I was surprised you all saw it. Who showed you? I sent it into the group. The silence that followed was immediate and absolute. The rapid-fire stream of messages just stopped. It was the digital equivalent of a needle scratching across a record in a crowded room. I watched the 3 little dots appear at the bottom of the screen. Someone was typing. Then they stopped. The dots vanished. A minute passed. The dots appeared again. My mother, they vanished. Then, Candace, typing, stopping. Finally, a message from my mother appeared, but it wasn't in the group chat. It was a private text, sent directly to me, a calculated move, taking the conversation offline, out of sight of the others. Don't be dramatic. Riley, it's not a secret. Your aunt was excited. A house of yours is a house for the family. We are all just happy for you. A house of yours is a house for the family. The old creed, the Northwood law. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine. It was the justification for every borrowed car, every loaned $1,000, every crossed boundary of my entire adult life. She hadn't answered the question. She had deflected, reframed me as dramatic, and then restated the very terms of engagement I had moved to West Haven to escape. I stared at her text. Happy for you. The words looked like a forgery. They've been inside, I whispered to the empty terminal office. They have all been inside. No, not all of them, not yet. Candace and Marla had been the scouts, but Uncle Bryce's big wall comment, my mother's red envelopes, they were all acting on the intel. Candace had gone back and given a full briefing. They knew the layout, they knew what I had, and now they were making their move. A plan formed. It was cold, it was sharp, and it was the only language they understood. An operation. I would set a trap, but I would use their own tools. Greed, assumption, and the sugary performance of family. I went back to the group chat. The silence was still reigning. A heavy, awkward pause. I ignored my mother's private text completely. I typed a new message, bright, cheerful, the old Riley voice they were used to. You guys are right. We should absolutely celebrate. I've just been so swamped with the new job. How about a real housewarming? This weekend is too soon. But how about next Saturday? Say 7 p.m., I'll make my famous spinach dip. I hit send. The response was instantaneous. It was like I had just thrown a steak into a kennel. From Candace. 7 p.m. is perfect. I'll be there. Can't wait to see it officially this time. LOL. From Aunt Marla. Wonderful. Sweetie, I'll be there at 7 sharp. I'll bring the good camera. From Uncle Bryce. 7 is good. Send me that money for the TV before then, and I'll bring it over. From my mother. 7 p.m., I will bring the list. 4 confirmations, 4 yes replies, all within 10 minutes. I looked at the messages, and a grim, cold smile touched my face. There was just one problem. I had invited them at 7 o'clock. I had been very specific. I had not, however, sent them my address. I had not sent them my unit number. I had not sent them the name of the building. And not one of them, not a single one, had asked for it. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the desk. The trap was set. They weren't just planning to come to a party. They were planning to show up, at a specific time, to a location they already possessed. They had a map. They had a plan. They probably already had a key. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on my sofa in the dark, the blue-white light of the West Haven port blinking in the distance, and I let the rage cool. I let it harden into something more useful. Focus. My apartment, my 700-square-foot sanctuary, no longer felt like my own. It felt contaminated. It was a crime scene, and I was the only detective. The confirmation that Candace had been here, that they all knew the address, that the housewarming was a charade, was just the perimeter breach. I needed to know the full extent of the damage. What did they do? What did they see? What did they take? My security system, I had relied on the door log, but I had one other piece of equipment. Months ago, when I first moved in, the quiet had been jarring. I'd bought a small, cube-shaped indoor security camera, a simple Wi-Fi model, and placed it on the top bookshelf. My justification at the time was peace of mind. I told myself it was to watch the living room, to make sure I'd turned off the coffee pot. Dr. Alvarez would have called it what it was, a high-tech new lock, an extension of the perimeter. I hadn't looked at the footage in weeks. I opened the app, my thumb sure and steady. I navigated to the camera's feed. I tapped Event History, and I stopped. I scrolled back to Tuesday, October 28th, the day of the duct inspection. The timeline was populated with clips. 9:02 a.m., motion detected. Me, grabbing my work bag. 9:58 p.m., motion detected. Me, returning from my double shift. Between those two entries was a single, glaring, red-lettered line. 2:35 p.m., file deletion. User, manual override. One file, 17M forest duration, has been erased. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't that the camera had been off. It was that it had been on. It had recorded. It had captured their entire 17-minute invasion, and then, at 2:35 p.m., just before the admin fob logged out, someone had manually accessed the app, or the camera itself, and deleted the evidence. This was no social call. This was not a surprise visit. This was a planned infiltration, complete with a cleanup protocol. They knew I had the camera. They knew to erase the file. This changed everything. They weren't just opportunistic. They were thorough. I got off the sofa and picked up my phone. I dialed building management again. Marco answered, his voice still cheerful. It was grating. Marco, Riley Northwood in 708 again. I am so sorry to bother you, but I have a follow-up on that maintenance call. No bother, Miss Northwood. You said the technicians were there for the ductwork. Can you confirm the exact location of that work in my unit? I heard him click a few keys. Yes, the work order for the 08 line. That's a duct inspection and filter change. The access vent is in the main entry hallway, right by your front door. Just the hallway? I asked, my voice flat. They had no reason to enter the main living room? Or the balcony? Oh, goodness, no, he said with a little laugh. That work order is for hallway access only. They're in and out. They wouldn't have been in your living room at all. Why? Is something out of place? No, Marco, I said, my throat tight. You've just confirmed what I needed to know. Thank you. I hung up. They wouldn't have been in your living room at all. But they had. They had been in the living room, they had been on the balcony, and they had spent time deleting the footage. I stood in my entryway. The vent was, as he said, directly overhead. I looked down at the hardwood floor. I hadn't vacuumed since the weekend. A thin, almost imperceptible layer of dust, made visible by the harsh morning light from the balcony, coated the floor. And in the dust, I saw it. It wasn't a full footprint. It was a partial, the faint, fine, gritty outline of a work boot's tread, the maintenance crew. But it wasn't just by the door. I knelt, my face close to the floor. I saw the first print just inside the doorway. I saw a second, turning not towards the vent, but towards the living room. And I saw a third, and a fourth, a clear, deliberate path. This was not a crew wandering aimlessly. This was a crew with a destination. I followed the ghostly trail with my eyes. It went straight past the kitchen, past the sofa. It made a perfect 90-degree turn. It went directly to my file cabinet. It was a simple, 2-drawer, fireproof cabinet, nothing special. It held my lease, my insurance papers, my car title, the boring, practical architecture of my life. I walked over to it. I ran my fingers over the top. It was clean, wiped. But I am meticulous. I am an operations manager. I live by my systems. And my system is that the file tabs in the top drawer are arranged in alphabetical order, from left to right, all perfectly aligned. I pulled the handle. The drawer slid open with a quiet shush. Auto insurance, bank statements, employment, home. The home tab, a dark blue file, was out of place. It was sitting 1/4 of an inch to the right of the employment tab, tilted, as if it had been pulled and thrust back in a hurry. I lifted the file out. My hands were not shaking. They were perfectly still. Inside, just as I had left it, my lease agreement, my renter's insurance policy, my welcome packet from Harbor Heights. And tucked in the back, the 3 pay stubs I had needed to apply for the apartment, the stubs that showed my salary, my bonus structure, my entire compensation at Blue Canyon Freight. The top pay stub was pristine, but the insurance policy, the page right in front of it, was printed on glossy cardstock, and on the bright blue logo of the insurance company, in the upper right corner, was a perfect oily smudge. A thumbprint, not mine. They hadn't just looked, they had photographed my income. They had confirmed the asset. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. What else? My spare key fob. I had one. The building gives you 2. I kept my spare in a small, magnetic box, hidden on the underside of the top shelf of my tallest kitchen cabinet. An emergency only, break glass in case of fire spare. I went to the kitchen. I pulled over a chair. I climbed up. I reached into the dark, back corner, my fingers finding the cold metal of the cabinet's underside. The magnetic box was gone. They hadn't just photographed my life. They had stolen the keys. Candace, or Marla, or whoever was with them, now had a key fob, a way to get in, anytime. I got down from the chair. The housewarming invitation. The trap. They didn't need it. They had their own invitation. I thought back to Candace. Let me use your address for a few deliveries. I grabbed my phone. My building has an app, a resident portal. It manages maintenance, rent, and packages. I opened it. I scrolled to the package log. I get packages from work, from Amazon. I recognize them. But there, from last Tuesday, October 28th, at 2:19 p.m., delivery, Electro-Zoom Electronics, 4 C. Northwood, Unit 708. Status, handed to resident at door. 2:19 p.m., 2 minutes after the admin fob had unlocked my door. Candace hadn't just been here to supervise. She had timed a delivery to my address in her name for the exact window of the infiltration. She had been standing inside my apartment when the buzzer rang, opened my door, and taken a package from a delivery driver, all while pretending to be the resident. The audacity of it, the sheer, naked, operational arrogance. She had received a package from an electronics store. I looked around my living room, my sanctuary, and I saw it not as a home, but as a compromised container. What was in the box? What did they bring in? What did they leave? They had wiped the camera file. They had stolen the key. They had photographed my income. They hadn't come to take something. They had come to plant something. I thought like an infiltrator. I thought like my mother. Like Candace. Where would you put a listening device? Somewhere with power? No. They'd risk me finding it. Somewhere central. Somewhere assumed. I looked at the big wall Uncle Bryce had so casually mentioned, the wall with my television. I walked over to the TV stand. I looked at the cable box, the router, the modem, all the little blinking lights of my connected life. I got on my hands and knees. I ran my fingers along the back of the stand. Nothing. I felt along the power strips. Nothing. Then I reached under the stand, a flat, particle board shelf, about 3 inches off the floor. My fingers brushed against the rough wood, and then something else. It was small, plastic, held in place by a square of gray, double-sided tape. I pulled it free. The tape made a soft, ripping sound. I stood up and opened my palm. It was a black plastic rectangle, no bigger than a book of matches, a cheap, battery-powered, voice-activated microphone, a room listener. I had seen them in a security brief from Blue Canyon about protecting sensitive freight negotiations. This is what was in the Electro-Zoom box. This is what Candace had signed for. They had bugged my apartment. A sound, half laugh, half gasp, escaped my throat. They had gone to all this trouble. They had coordinated with maintenance, breached my home, stolen my key, photographed my files, all to plant this cheap, pathetic, $10 piece of spy shop trash. They wanted to listen. They were still listening. I looked at the tiny black object in my hand. I thought about crushing it. I thought about flushing it. I thought about marching to the police. No. This was a game of operations, and my opponents were sloppy. I walked over to the large potted ficus tree by the window, the one I had just watered. I knelt. I pushed my finger into the damp soil, right near the edge of the pot, and made a small hole. I took the microphone, faced the tiny pinprick sensor outward, toward the room, and I pressed it down into the cold, wet earth until only the very top was exposed, hidden perfectly by the shade of a broad leaf. It was still active. It could still hear. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my hands. I looked out the window, at the gray water of the bay, at the distant, silent ships. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "You want to listen?" I whispered to the room, to the ficus, to the tiny black heart I had just planted. "Fine. I'll make sure you hear exactly what you need to hear." I did not go to work the next day. I called in sick. I used the official Blue Canyon portal and cited a migraine. In reality, I was an operations manager analyzing a hostile takeover, and the target was my own life. The bug in the ficus tree was my new focal point. Every move I made, every breath I took, was now a performance for an audience of thieves. I knew I needed counsel. I was smart, but I was in over my head. This had moved from family drama to criminal conspiracy. There was only one person I trusted who operated at this level. I left my apartment at 8 in the morning. I left my personal phone on the kitchen counter, next to the plant, where it was visible but silent. I took my work phone, my encrypted Blue Canyon device, which I knew was secure. I walked 3 miles to the West Haven Public Library. I found a private study carrel in the back, sat down, and plugged in my headphones. I initiated a secure call through my work server. She picked up on the second ring. "Nora, you're early." Nora Diaz was senior legal counsel for Blue Canyon Freight's North American division. She was the one who handled contract disputes with German shipping magnates and federal investigations into customs fraud. She was, to put it mildly, terrifyingly competent. She was also the closest thing I had to a real friend. "Hey, Nora," I said, my voice low. "I need advice, not as a friend, as a lawyer." The line was silent for a second. Her tone changed, all warmth gone, replaced by the sharp, sterile click of her professional persona. "Okay, are you safe? Is this a work issue?" "I am physically safe. It's a personal issue, but it has operational security implications. I'm compromised." "Talk to me, Riley." I laid it out. I gave her the data, point by point, just as I had collected it. The 3-month silence, the sudden post from Marla, the balcony, the unauthorized maintenance visit, the admin fob, the 17-minute motion log, Candace's visitor pass, the deleted camera file, the stolen key fob, the package delivery in Candace's name, and finally, the cheap, black voice-activated microphone I had pulled from under my television stand. Nora did not interrupt. She let me speak for 10 solid minutes. When I finished, the silence on the line was so heavy I could feel it. "Nora?" "Riley," she said, and her voice was dangerously quiet. "I am going to put my friend hat on for exactly 1 second. That is horrifying. I am so sorry." She took a breath. "Okay, friend hat is off, legal hat is on. Your family, specifically Candace and Marla, have committed several felonies, breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and, depending on state law, planting a listening device in your private residence is a serious wiretapping violation. What they are doing is textbook illegal." "I know," I said, "but I can't prove it was them who planted it. The camera file is gone." "You don't need to," Nora said, her voice quickening. "You have the security logs. You have the package delivery in Candace's name from an electronics store. A prosecutor could build that case, but the real leverage is the bug itself. They want to listen. It's an active line of communication. They don't know that you know. This is an incredible tactical advantage. Riley." "That's what I thought," I said. "They're listening for weakness. They're listening for money." "So, we give them what they're listening for," Nora said. "We don't just set a trap. We stage a play, and we create evidence." We spent the next hour building the operation. Nora's legal mind was a beautiful, terrifying thing. She dismantled my vague anger and rebuilt it into a structured plan. It was, she called it, a controlled evidentiary narrative. The bait, we decided, had to be big enough to make them sloppy, big enough to make them act. "A $40,000 bonus," I said, the number just popping into my head. "Blue Canyon is expanding. I can frame it as a relocation and retention bonus." "Perfect," Nora said. "Big, but plausible. Now, they need a target, a place to get the money. You can't just have that in a checking account. It needs to be physical." "The safe," I said. "I still have that old, small dorm safe from college. The one with the keypad. It's in the back of my closet." "Even better," Nora's voice was sharp. "An old, Weak target. And the weakness? The password, I said. The plan clicking into place. I'll accidentally say it out loud. The factory default, 123456. It's beautifully stupid. They'll believe it in a heartbeat, Nora said. But that's not enough. A recording of you saying that isn't proof they heard it. You need to document their reaction to the information. This was phase 1. Phase 2 was the housewarming. You already invited them for 7 p.m. next Saturday, Nora clarified. Yes, they all confirmed. Not one of them asked for the address. That's your timeline. They have a key. They have a motive. They will not wait until 7 p.m. when you're home. They will come before that. When they think the apartment is empty, to get the bonus from the safe, that is when we catch them. How? I asked. The main camera is compromised. You're an operations manager. Riley, you don't have one camera. You have redundancy. You're going to buy a new camera, a different one, a nanny cam, something hidden in a clock or a picture frame, and you are going to aim it, exclusively, at that closet door and that safe. That is your real camera, the one they know nothing about. Phase 3 was the payload. They can't just steal money, Riley, they'll deny it. You need to give them something they can't deny, something that proves, unequivocally, that they opened that safe. Nora's legal mind was singing. We'll draft a document, a fake confidential settlement agreement from Blue Canyon Freight to you, detailing the $40,000 bonus transfer. We'll put it in a big, official envelope, and you will put a tamper-evident seal on it, a notary sticker, something that will visibly rip when opened. We will photograph the sealed, intact envelope with a timestamp. When they take it, they break the seal. That is the proof. And a serial number, I added, my own mind racing. I'll put a unique serial number on the document itself. Yes, RRN001, Nora said. This is good. This is solid. Phase 4 was containment. I'll call building security, I said. I'll report my spare key fob lost. I'll ask them to put a security flag on it. If that fob is ever used, they are to log the time, the entry, and who used it, but not to deactivate it. Exactly. We want them to walk right through the front door. Nora, it's a lot. It is, she said. And it's your only move. You can't live in a house with a bug. Riley, you can't live with a stolen key. You have to force their hand. You have to end this. This is how you end it. I walked back from the library. The plan was a heavy, cold, precise instrument in my pocket. I stopped at an electronics store first. I bought a small, digital alarm clock. It was black, unobtrusive, and had a high-definition, motion-activated camera lens hidden in the face. I paid in cash. Back in my apartment, the air felt different. I was no longer a victim. I was the director. The bug in the plant was my unwitting actor. I set up the clock camera on my dresser, angled perfectly to see the closet door. I calibrated it with my secure work phone. I went to the closet and pulled out the old dorm safe. I set it on the floor, in plain sight of the new camera. Then, I sat on my sofa, in the middle of the living room, in clear earshot of the ficus tree. I took out my personal phone. It was time for the performance. I dialed Nora's personal number. I let it ring. I knew she'd be waiting. Nora, I said, my voice intentionally pitched with anxiety, loud enough to carry. Oh, thank God you picked up. I'm kind of freaking out. I got up and started pacing. I walked toward the plant. I walked away. I was the picture of nervous energy. No, it's good news, I think. I just got off the phone with HR. Nora, they're giving it to me, the full $40,000. I paused, listening to the fake dial tone. I know. A full relocation and retention bonus. They said I'm critical infrastructure for the West Haven expansion. I walked over and sat on the arm of the sofa, right next to the plant. I dropped my voice to a conspiratorial, nervous whisper. I'm terrified. Nora, it's so much money. They're transferring the first half, but they're giving me the official transfer documents and a signing check tomorrow. I have to have it all here, in my apartment. I don't feel safe. Another pause. You're right. You're right. I'm just being paranoid. I'm going to put it all in that old dorm safe I had, the one from college. I need to hide it. I got up. I walked into the bedroom. I fumbled with the safe, making shuffling noises. I walked back into the living room, closer to the bug. This is so stupid, I said, with a forced, nervous laugh. I'm so flustered I can't even remember how to set the password. I'm just leaving it on the factory default for now. What is it? 123456? God, that's so dumb. But I'm just hiding the whole safe in the back of my closet. It'll be fine, right? It'll be fine until the bank opens Monday. I said my goodbyes and hung up. I stood in the silence of the room. The performance was complete. The bait was laid. I went to my computer. I printed the fake Blue Canyon bonus agreement Nora had emailed to my secure account. I put it in a heavy manila envelope. I affixed a bright gold, star-shaped notary seal over the flap. I wrote RRN001 in the corner. I took a high-resolution, time-stamped photo of it with my work phone. Then, I placed the envelope inside the safe, closed the door, and typed in 123456. The light flashed green, and the bolts engaged. I hid the safe under a pile of sweaters in my closet, just as I'd said. Finally, I went to the resident portal. I sent a formal email to Harbor Heights Management, inviting them to my housewarming. Next Saturday at 7 p.m., I seed the Northwood Collective email address I knew they all shared. I included the full, correct building address. This was the official, trackable, wrong time. I had done everything I could. Now, I just had to wait for the rats to take the bait. It took less than 6 hours. My phone rang at 5:30 p.m. It was my mother. "Riley, dear," she said, her voice dripping with a thick, false sweetness. "I was just thinking about you. I'm so glad we're coming on Saturday." "Me too, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "I was just doing some financial planning, for my church group, and it made me think, with your big new job, and any bonuses or incentives you get from that transfer, you need to be so careful with your taxes." My blood ran cold. "Oh?" I said. "Yes, a large lump sum like that can push you into a whole new bracket. It's very complicated. I should probably handle the filing for you this year, just to be safe, to make sure it's all declared properly. I'll need your social security number, of course, and any paperwork your company gives you about the relocation. Just text me the numbers. I'll take care of it for you." She was fishing. She was fishing for my social security number to help me declare the $40,000 she had heard about on the bug. "I'll think about it. Mom," I said. "I have to go." I hung up. I was still staring at the screen when a new text message popped up. It was Candace. "Hey, R. So excited for Sat. Listen, weird thought. I was thinking about your new place. It's cute, but it's not safe." I read the word, "not safe." "I mean, I got in there pretty easily, remember? If you have emergency funds, like cash from a bonus or something, you shouldn't keep it there. Too many people have access. My place is much more secure. I can hold on to that kind of emergency fund for you. Keep it safe. Just let me know. Happy to help." I looked at the text. I looked at my mother's missed call. I looked at the ficus tree. The bait was not just ripe. It had been devoured. Saturday, the day of the party. The entire day was a performance of agonizing, weaponized normalcy. I went for my run. I came home, made coffee, and chatted at the ficus tree, a meaningless, loud monologue about being excited for the party. But, "Oh, I have to run out and get more ice. I'll be back way before 6:30. But just in case, I'll leave the door unlocked." A lie. A stupid, obvious lie that I knew they wouldn't believe. They wouldn't need an unlocked door. They had a key. The lie was just to confirm I was flighty, disorganized, and not a threat. Nora and I had finalized the plan. Harbor Heights Security was on board. Not just Marco at the desk, but the building's head of security, a no-nonsense ex-cop named Sal. Sal had reviewed my evidence, the log from the maintenance day, the package delivery in Candace's name, and his professional calm had turned to a cold, hard anger. He hated residents who compromised the building. He agreed to provide an officer, not to arrest, not yet, but to observe and de-escalate. At 4 p.m., Sal had an officer, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Diego, do a quiet sweep of my apartment. He confirmed my clock camera was operational and invisible. He confirmed the ficus bug was active. He then found the second bug, the one my family had left behind. It was stuck behind a framed photo of the West Haven Bridge, a cheap gift from my work. This one was newer, flatter. 2 separate devices, Diego had whispered, his voice a low rumble. One for the bonus info, one as a backup, or maybe to triangulate. They're amateurs, but they're not stupid. He had left it in place. Let them listen to the silence, he said. At 5:30 p.m., Diego and I were in the fire stairwell on the 7th floor, 1 floor below me. No, we were in the leasing office, on the ground floor, monitoring the feeds. That was the plan. Sal had given us access to the main security hub, a bank of monitors showing the lobby, the elevators, and the hallway outside my door. My departure had to be flawless. At 5:50 p.m., on the dot, I walked out of my apartment. 7:08. I was wearing my running shoes, leggings, and a hoodie, carrying a reusable grocery bag. I looked exactly like someone making a last-minute dash for party supplies. I smiled at the hallway camera, a wide, bright, oblivious smile. I locked my door. I walked to the elevator, punched the button, and rode it down to the lobby. I waved at Marco at the desk. Back in a flash. Forget the ice. Don't worry, Ms. Northwood, he called back, his voice part of the play. Have a good party. I pushed through the glass doors and walked out into the cold November evening. I did not go to the store. I circled the block, a 2-minute walk, and entered the building's side entrance, the one for staff, using my work ID as Nora had arranged with Sal. The door clicked open. I was back inside the hive. I met Diego in the ground floor security office. It was a windowless room smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. On the main monitor, Sal had isolated 4 feeds: the elevator interior, the lobby, the 7th floor hallway cam, and, on a separate tablet, the live feed from my own clock camera. 5:53 p.m., Sal said, nodding at me. Subject is off-site. We are green. We waited. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the quiet hum of the servers. I watched my own hallway, empty, the elevator, empty. My clock camera feed showed my dark, silent bedroom, the closet door a pale rectangle in the low light. My heart was not racing. It was slow, a heavy, cold drum, each beat a second. At 6:01 p.m., the lobby camera feed twitched. The front glass doors slid open. It was Candace. She was wearing a trench coat, her hair pulled back. She was not dressed for a party. She was dressed for business. She was followed by my mother, then Aunt Marla, then Uncle Bryce. 4 of them. They did not stop at the desk. Candace led them, not like a guest, but like a tour guide, making a sharp left directly toward the resident elevators. She has the stolen fob, I whispered. We know, Sal said. They reached the elevator bank. Candace swiped the fob. The light on the panel flashed green. The doors slid open. They stepped inside. The elevator interior camera was sharp, black and white. Candace pressed 7. Marla was wringing her hands, looking up at the camera. My mother stood ramrod straight. Her purse clutched like a weapon. Bryce was checking his watch. The doors closed. Diego, you're on, Sal said. Diego nodded. He stood, adjusted his belt, and walked out of the security office. He did not go to the elevator. He took the stairs. His job was to be on the 7th floor before the elevator arrived, to be the surprise witness already in the hall. Feed from the plant bug, Sal said, tapping a button on his console. A speaker in the ceiling crackled to life. At first, just static. Then, the ding of the elevator arriving. A new feed, the 7th floor hallway, showed the doors opening. The 4 of them spilled out. They looked left. They looked right. The hallway was empty. Diego was already tucked into the emergency exit alcove, out of sight. They walked to my door, 708. Candace fumbled in her coat pocket. She pulled out my spare fob. She held it up. The speaker crackled. "Sure this is the one?" Marla's voice, thin and reedy. "It's the one I took. It works," Candace snapped. She pressed the fob to the lock. We heard it, a soft, digital thwack as the deadbolt retracted. The lock log on Sal's screen flashed red. 6:02 p.m. Door unlocked by fob RF4B19, stolen fob. The door pushed open. They slipped inside, one by one. Marla was last, pulling the door shut behind her. The hallway was now empty. My apartment was full. "Switching to internal feeds," I said. My voice was a croak. Sal tapped the tablet. The clock camera feed filled the main screen. It was motion-activated. The feed, once dark, burst into light as the bedroom light flipped on. My mother. She was the first one in the bedroom. "Where is it? Where's the safe?" she demanded. The audio was clear. She said in the closet, Candace's voice. The camera watched as Candace and my mother marched to the closet. Marla and Bryce hovered in the doorway. "Act as lookout," my mother ordered Marla. "Bryce, check the living room. See if she bought that television. Make sure she's not coming back." "On it," Bryce said, vanishing from the frame. We heard his heavy footsteps in the living room, through the bug in the plant. "Okay," Candace said. "She said it was under sweaters." We watched, in crystal clear high definition, as my cousin shoved my clothes aside. "Got it." She dragged the small black safe into the middle of the room. "What's the code?" my mother hissed. 123456, Candace said, her voice dripping with contempt. "She said it on the phone. The idiot." Candace knelt, her fingers, manicured for her wedding, moved to the keypad. Beep, 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 beep. A green light, a click. The camera feed was perfectly angled. We saw her pull the small metal door open. "There," my mother said. She lunged, pushing Candace aside. She reached into the dark interior of the safe and pulled out the single, thick, manila envelope. "Blue Canyon Freight," my mother read, her voice trembling with greed. "Confidential." She saw the gold notary seal. She saw the serial number, RRN001. "Is this it?" Marla called from the hallway. "Did you get it?" "Shut up," my mother snapped. She held the envelope. She didn't hesitate. She hooked her finger under the flap and tore. The sound of the paper ripping, of the gold seal breaking, was the loudest sound in the security room. My mother's face went from triumph to confusion. She pulled out the contents. It wasn't a check. It was a single, heavy stock sheet of paper. She read it. The clock camera watched her face drain of color. It watched her hands begin to shake. "What is it?" Candace demanded, leaning over her shoulder. "What does it say?" My mother was silent. Candace grabbed the paper. She read it aloud, her voice a disbelieving whisper. "Notice of privacy violation and temporary civil injunction. 2. Candace Northwood, Marla Northwood, Sharon Northwood, Bryce Northwood." She dropped the paper as if it were on fire. "What the hell is this?" Bryce yelled, running back into the bedroom. It's a legal paper," Marla stammered, from the door. "It's a trick," my mother shrieked. "She tricked us, that lying." And at that exact moment, I gave Sal the nod. He hit the master override for my unit's lighting. Every light in my apartment, the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, flashed on at full, blinding brightness. The 4 of them froze, blinking in the sudden glare, like rats in a laboratory. And from the living room, my voice, "The party's not until 6:30. I had walked from the security office. Sal was right behind me, his radio in his hand. Diego, the officer, was already standing in the hallway, blocking the only exit. I stepped into the bedroom doorway. Sal stood just behind me, a massive, uniformed silhouette. They all spun, my mother, Candace, Marla, Bryce. Their faces were a grotesque collage of shock, rage, and pure animal panic. The ripped envelope was on the floor. The open safe was at their feet. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just looked at them. "You all said you missed me," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "But it looks like you just missed what was in my safe." My mother found her voice first. "Riley, what is the meaning of this? Who is this man? We were planning a surprise." "A surprise," I repeated, "with a stolen key fob and my default code." "This man," Sal said, his voice booming in the small room, "is building security, and you are all trespassing." He pointed to Candace. "You, ma'am, I need to see your guest pass, and your fob." Candace went white. Aunt Marla started to babble. I just came to see the decor. I told her I was coming. I was just taking pictures of the decor." "You're not a registered guest, ma'am," Sal said, his eyes flat. "All of you are in a unit you did not enter legally." I turned my gaze to my mother. She was still vibrating with rage. "You have no right?" she started. "Mom," I cut her off. The word felt like acid. "Are you at all familiar with residential trespass laws in this state? Or the federal statutes on illegal wiretapping?" That hit them, all of them, even Bryce. We're leaving," Candace stammered, grabbing for her coat. "You're forgetting something," I said. They stopped. I walked over to the framed photo of the bridge. I took it off the wall. I turned it over. I plucked the small, flat, black square from the back and held it up. "This one is new," I said. "You must have left it when you came back for the key. Sloppy." My mother's face was a mask of pure hatred. They filed out, a silent, shuffling retreat. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at Sal. They just moved toward the door. "Have a good night," Sal said, his voice dripping with professional courtesy, as they stumbled past Diego in the hall. We heard the elevator ding. They were gone. I stood alone in the wreckage of my bedroom. The open safe, the ripped envelope, the clothes on the floor. Sal and Diego were doing a final sweep. "Ms. Northwood," Diego called from the living room. "You were right. They're amateurs." I walked out to join him. He was pointing at the ficus tree. The first bug, the one I had planted, was still there. "They didn't even check to see if their first device was still working," he said. "They just planted a new one. They bugged their own bug." I looked at the little black microphone in my hand, and the one still in the dirt. The trap had worked. The operation was a success. But my apartment felt more compromised than ever. The silence that followed their retreat was louder than the confrontation. Sal and Diego were professional, efficient. They took my statement. They cataloged the 2 bugs as evidence. They took the ripped notice of privacy and the torn, gold-sealed envelope. They took the hard drive from the security hub, containing the feed from the hallway, the elevator, and most importantly, the high-definition, undeniable footage from my own clock camera. "What you do with this is your call, Ms. Northwood," Sal said, his voice kind for the first time. "You have a rock-solid case for a restraining order, at minimum." I nodded, numb. "Thank you, Sal, for everything." After they left, I stood in my bedroom. The safe was still open, the closet in disarray. It was 7:15 p.m. The party was supposed to be starting. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning, not just the closet. I scrubbed the floors. I wiped down every surface, every doorknob. I was erasing them. I was trying to scour their DNA from my home. At midnight, I sat on my pristine, sterile sofa, and I waited. I knew the night was just the opening act. The real performance, the spin, would come with the sunrise. My phone rang at 8:01 the next morning. It was my mother. "Riley," she said. Her voice was not the shriek of last night. It was a cold, measured, trembling rage. You need to explain yourself, and you need to call off your little security guards. I said nothing. Did you hear me? We were trying to do something nice for you, a surprise. We came early to set up decorations for your party. We were going to surprise you, and you humiliated us. You brought in those men. You treated your own family like criminals. The audacity. It was breathtaking. The performance was so complete, so total. I almost marveled at it. A surprise, I said, my voice flat. Is that what you were doing when you tore open the envelope in my safe? We thought it was part of the surprise. Aunt Marla's voice. Suddenly, on a speakerphone, they were all in a room together, a war room. We thought you had left us a thank you note. And that man, that gorilla, he scared us. So you're sticking with the surprise party story, I said. A surprise party you used a stolen key to get into. A surprise party you planted a second bug for. A surprise party to set up at 6:02 p.m., 40 minutes before the guests were supposed to arrive. You, my mother was sputtering. Hold on, I said. I'm a little confused about the surprise part. Maybe this will clear it up. I had the file ready. I had spent all night isolating the audio from the clock camera. I held my phone near my laptop speaker and I hit play. The tinny, unmistakable sound of Candace's voice filled the line. She said it on the phone. The idiot! Then, my mother's. Where is it? Where's the safe? Then Candace's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then the beep, 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 beep of the keypad. I hit stop. The silence on the other end of the line was no longer a strategy. It was a vacuum. I could hear Aunt Marla let out a small, terrified sob. You, my mother whispered, her voice a venomous rasp. You recorded us? Your own family? You bugged me, I countered, my voice like ice. Twice, I just happened to have the better equipment. You ungrateful, treacherous. The mask was gone. The raw, unfiltered rage I had known my entire life came pouring through the phone. After everything we did for you, everything I sacrificed, you owe this family, you owe me. I've paid, I said, and the words were quiet, but they cut through her screaming. I paid your light bill for 3 years. I paid for Candace's transmission. I paid for Uncle Bryce's investment that never panned out. I have paid my debt for 10 years. That was the fee. It does not, and it will never, include ownership of my life. I hung up. My phone did not ring again. Instead, it exploded. It was the death rattle of the Northwood Collective. The snake was eating itself. A text from Candace, a long, rambling paragraph. It was all Mom's idea. She made me. She said you owed us. She said it wasn't fair that you had so much and we had nothing. Marla is the one who charmed the maintenance guy to let us in that first time. I just signed the book. It was all Marla and Mom. A text from Uncle Bryce, simple and useless. Your mother is very upset. You should apologize. And then, a phone call, Aunt Marla. She was sobbing, a hysterical, gulping sound. Riley, please, you can't call the police. I'll lose everything. My blog, my house, please. It was Sharon. It was your mother. This was it, the analysis, the motive. I was no longer the daughter. I was the detective. I was the lawyer. Why, Marla? I asked, my voice cold. Not the surprise, not the bonus. Why the first time? Why the bug? Why did my mother want to get into my apartment? She stammered. I have you on video, Marla. I lied, though I knew the clock camera was enough. I have you on high-definition video. Trespassing, aiding, and abetting. Sal has the logs. You have exactly 1 chance to tell me the truth. The sob turned into a wail. The church! It was the church! I sat down. What about the church? Your mother, she sniffled. She's in debt, bad debt. The mortgage on the old house, the credit cards. She's been trying. She's been trying to get an aid package from her new church, the Family in Need Fund, a big one. Riley, $20,000. I said nothing. The pieces were locking into place. But to get the money, Marla rushed on. She had to prove hardship. She had to prove she had no other support. No family to help her. The blood in my veins turned to slush. She needed to prove, I whispered, that I had abandoned her. Yes, Marla cried. That was the plan. The first plan. We were just supposed to get proof. Proof of your new life. That's why I needed the picture. That's why she needed Candace to get your pay stubs, to show the church board how much you made, to prove you were rich, and that you were withholding it from your poor, sick mother. She was building a case against you. I closed my eyes. The sheer, diabolical, operational brilliance of it. The pay stubs I'd seen smudged, the file they'd pulled. It was never about me. It was about the narrative. And the post? I asked, my voice hollow. Your decor post? That was to set the story, she said, to show everyone how well you were doing, so that when your mother's hardship story came out, everyone would be on her side. They would see you. They would see you as the ungrateful, wealthy daughter who wouldn't help her own family. The two-pronged attack, the pincer movement. Plan A. Leverage my success to paint me as a villain and solicit $20,000 in aid from the church. And the bonus? I asked. The $40,000. Marla was quiet for a second. That, she said, her voice dropping. That was just a surprise, a cherry on top. When we heard you talking about it on the bug, your mother, she laughed. She said, "Why ask the church for 20 when we can just take 40 from Riley?" She said it was God's will, a test, that we were meant to hear it. I had no more words. It was all there. A comprehensive, multi-layered operation of fraud, theft, and slander, and I was the central, unwilling cog. I hung up on Marla, mid-sob. I spent the next hour working. I gathered every file, the video from the clock, the separate audio I'd saved from the bug, the time-stamped photos of the sealed envelope, the new, panicked text messages from Candace, my written notes from my call with Marla, dated and timed, the official reports from Sal and Diego, which they had already emailed me. I compiled it into a single, encrypted, password-protected file. I titled it Operation Northwood. I sent it to Nora. The subject, full evidentiary package, proceed. Her reply came in less than 5 minutes. Riley, I have no words. This is organized crime. The DA this is a slam dunk, wire fraud, conspiracy, trespass. What do you want to do? I looked around my quiet, clean apartment. I thought about court. I thought about my mother's face on a stand. I thought about Candace's texts being read aloud. I thought about the noise, the endless, screaming noise. No, I typed back. No police, no criminal charges, not yet. I don't want them in my life, not even as defendants in a courtroom. I want them gone. I want silence. A cease and desist? Nora replied. It's paper. They'll ignore it. No, I typed. Not a C&D, a formal settlement agreement. We draft a contract, a binding, civil document. The Northwood family agrees to my terms, and in consideration, I, Riley Northwood, agree not to pursue any and all civil or criminal charges for the events of last night and the preceding weeks. This is a power move, Riley, Nora wrote. I love it. What are the terms? I typed them out, my fingers flying. Immediate, physical return of the stolen key fob via trackable courier. 2. A signed, notarized affidavit from Candace Northwood, detailing the full timeline of the illegal entries, the theft of the key, and the planting of the listening devices. 3. A signed, binding agreement from all 4 of them, Sharon, Candace, Marla, and Bryce, that they will never again, A. Come within 500 feet of my residence or my place of employment, B. Contact me, my employer, or any of my associates. C. Use my name, my address, or my identity for any financial, personal, or social gain. D. Misrepresent themselves as my dependents or victims to any institution, public or private. All contact, forever, must be through legal counsel. 4. I added, a public, time-stamped retraction and apology from Marla on her social media, stating she entered my home without permission. Nora's reply was quick. That's ironclad, and you know, for a fact, they will never, ever sign this. I know, I typed. That's not the point. The point is the offer. It's the final, documented proof that I gave them a choice, a way out. Their refusal will be the final piece of evidence. Nora drafted the agreement. It was a beautiful, terrifying, 10-page document of precise legal language. She emailed it, as my acting counsel, to all 4 of them, at their individual email addresses. Then, I waited. The Northwood Collective chat was a graveyard. Marla's Decor Goals feed was suddenly dark. 1 day passed. Silence. 2 days passed. Silence. On the 3rd morning, a small, white padded FedEx envelope arrived at the front desk. Marco called me. You have a package, Ms. Northwood, no return address. I'll be right down, I said. I opened it in the lobby. Inside, with no note, no letter, not even a scrap of paper, was my stolen key fob. It was tossed in like a piece of garbage. I looked at it. The unsigned agreement was their answer. The key was their white flag. It was not an apology. It was not an admission. It was a truce, born of mutual assured destruction. I dropped the fob into the lobby's trash can. Sal had already changed my locks. Nora's agreement hung in the digital air, a ticking clock. She had given them 72 hours to sign, 72 hours to choose the quiet, civil path, to acknowledge the breach, return the key, and withdraw, in exchange for my silence. They were 3 days of the strangest quiet I have ever known. My apartment was a fortress again, but it felt like a pressurized cabin. I had the video, I had the audio, I had the confessions, I had the power, and yet, I just felt tired. I went to work, I ran my routes, I watched the massive container ships, and I wondered if all families were just complex, hostile logistics chains. I slept on the sofa. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the bedroom where the clock camera had watched them tear through my life. The deadline was Wednesday at noon. I watched the clock on my work computer. 10 a.m., 11, 11:30. No emails from Nora, no calls, no frantic texts. Noon. The deadline passed. No one had signed, not Candace, not Marla, not Bryce, and certainly not my mother. The silence was their answer. It was a rejection of the terms. It was, in its own way, a declaration of war. They would not apologize. They would not sign. They would simply retreat, regroup, and wait for me to make the next move, assuming I would, as always, eventually just absorb the cost. Then, at 12:04 p.m., my phone pinged. It was a text from Candace. It was not a long paragraph of excuses. It was not a plea. It was just a photo. My stolen key fob. It was sitting in the bottom of my metal mailbox, down in the Harbor Heights lobby. She hadn't even bothered to put it in an envelope. She had, at some point, come back to the building, a building she was now effectively banned from, and tossed the key into the slot, a final, metallic middle finger. It was not an apology. It was a disposal of evidence. It was not peace. It was a strategic retreat. I stared at the photo. She had sent it. She wanted me to know. It was her way of saying, "You got the key back. We're even. Now shut up." I deleted the text message. I did not reply. I picked up my desk phone and called Sal, the head of security. "Sal, it's Riley Northwood." "Ms. Northwood, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Did they sign?" "No, but they just returned the stolen property. It's in my mailbox." I'll have an officer retrieve it immediately and log it as evidence. Don't bother, I said. I don't care about the fob. I care about the access. I need you to do two things for me. First, deactivate all fobs associated with my unit, effective immediately, except the single one in my hand. Deactivate the one Candace just returned. Deactivate my original one. Deactivate the one I lost. All of them. Burn the access list. Consider it done, he said. Second, I said, I need to change the physical lock, the deadbolt. Today, can you recommend a locksmith? Already on it, Sal said. He'll be there at 5 p.m. The building will cover the cost. When I got home that night, there was a new, shiny silver deadbolt on my door. My new key fob was the only one in the system. My apartment, for the first time in weeks, was physically mine. I slept in my own bed. The next evening, the intercom buzzed, not my phone, the hardwired intercom to the lobby. Yes, I said, pressing the button. A distorted, staticky voice. Riley? It's Aunt Marla. Please, I need to talk to you. I'm alone. I looked at my door, the new lock, the secure fob. I'm coming down, I said. I went to the lobby. She was standing outside the glass doors, in the cold, not even trying the handle. She knew her access was gone. Her coat was buttoned wrong, and her eyes were red and puffy. The curated, beige-filtered matriarch was gone. This was just a panicked, tired woman. I opened the door. You have 5 minutes. Marla? Please, Riley, not here. I let her come up. It was a test. Could I stand to have one of them in my space, on my terms? The elevator ride was silent. I unlocked my door. She stepped inside and seemed to shrink. The apartment, now clean and silent, was an indictment. She wouldn't look at the living room. She wouldn't look toward the bedroom. I went to the kitchen. I filled the kettle. My hands were steady. Tea? I asked. She just nodded, sitting stiffly on the very edge of my sofa, her purse in her lap like a shield. I brought her a mug. I sat in the chair opposite her. I did not say a word. She started to cry, a quiet, hopeless, ugly cry. I never meant for it to go that far, she whispered. I said nothing. Your mother, Sharon, she can be very convincing. I waited. Riley, please, she begged, looking up at me. I thought you were lonely. I thought you needed family, all alone in this big new city. We were just worried about you. The performance was so ingrained. She had defaulted to the old script, even now. I took a sip of my own tea. It was hot, grounding. No, you weren't, I said. My voice was not unkind. It was just final. You weren't worried. You were assessing. You didn't think I was lonely. You thought I was solvent. She flinched, as if I had slapped her. I didn't need family, Aunt Marla, I said, setting the mug down. I needed respect. I needed a knock. I needed a, how are you, that didn't have a price tag attached. I needed you, my own aunt, not to use my balcony as a prop to build a fraud case with your church. Her face crumpled. The last lie had just been vaporized. She told you. You told me, I corrected. When you sobbed on the phone after I hung up on my mother, you all did. You all confessed on each other. She looked down into her mug. Your mother, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The one I'd heard my whole life. The one that always preceded the asking of a favor. She's not well in her finances. She did it to keep the house, the old house in Maple Ridge, after your dad left. I knew this. It was the backdrop to my entire childhood. She kept the house, Marla continued, but she took out loans, not from a bank. She got in with some private lenders, high interest, very high interest. They were going to take the house, Riley. She was desperate. Her pride. She couldn't just ask you for the money. Not all of it. It was too much. She looked up, her eyes pleading. So she came up with the plan. The church aid. It was just a lie. Riley, a way to get the money to pay off the sharks. She was just ashamed. I listened. I heard the words. I heard the desperation. I pictured my mother, a woman I'd known only as a tyrant, as something I'd never considered. Pathetic, a victim of her own suffocating pride. I felt a brief, agonizing, cold flicker of empathy, the pain of a daughter who sees the monster and just finds a broken, old woman. And then I put it away. I can be sorry about the loans, I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. I can understand, academically, what it means to be desperate, but pride is not a license to invade my home. Shame is not a key fob. My mother's poor financial planning is not my emergency, and it is certainly not an excuse to plant microphones under my television. Marla's face fell. I had not given her the absolution she had come for. "Okay," she said, her voice small. She stood up. "Okay, I understand." She walked to the door. She put her hand on the new deadbolt. "Riley?" she asked, not turning around. "The picture, my post, the original one, from your balcony. It's still up. Your mother's church. They've seen it. It's causing a lot of questions. Please, can I just take it down?" She wanted to erase the evidence. She wanted to scrub the timeline. I thought for a long, hard second. I could say no. I could keep it up as a monument to her stupidity. But I was an operations manager. I didn't want monuments. I wanted results. "You can take it down," I said. She let out a huge sigh of relief, her shoulders sagging. "Oh, thank you, Riley. After," I cut her off. She froze. "After what?" "After you post a clarification." "A what?" "A new post, a public retraction. You will state, clearly, that you entered my home without my consent and that your original post was a violation of my privacy. You don't have to apologize. You just have to tell the truth." "Riley, no, I can't," she gasped. My followers, my blog, it would ruin me. Your mother would—" "You have two choices, Marla," I said, walking to the door. "You post the retraction, and then you are free to delete the original photo, or you do nothing, and in 1 hour, Nora releases the full, unedited video of you, Candace, and my mother trespassing in my apartment, complete with the audio of you planning to defraud a church. That video will ruin you far more than a simple retraction. Your call." She looked at me. The sniveling, crying aunt was gone. She just looked cold. She knew she was beaten. She pulled out her phone, her thumbs, the same ones that curated her beige life, tapped furiously. A minute later, she showed me the screen. It was a new post, no photo, just text. "A personal update. I need to clarify an image I posted last week from my niece's balcony. I must state that I entered her apartment and took that photo without her knowledge or her explicit permission. It was a lapse in judgment and a violation of her privacy." "Good," I said. "Now post it." I watched her hit the button. I watched it go live. "Now, you can delete the old one," I said. She did. Then she pushed past me, out of my apartment, and did not say goodbye. I closed my door. I turned the new deadbolt. The click was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I left my phone on the counter. I didn't need to look. I knew what was happening. But after an hour, curiosity won. I opened the Northwood Collective group chat. It was a bonfire. It had exploded, but it wasn't Marla they were attacking. It was me. How could you do this to Marla? Forcing her to post that? "You are trying to shame your family." "She said she was sorry. What more do you want?" "This is sick. Riley, airing our dirty laundry. Mom is devastated by what you've done to her sister." They weren't angry about the trespass. They weren't angry about the bugging. They were angry they had been caught. They were angry that the retraction had broken the family's unspoken rule. We protect the narrative, no matter what. I was the villain. Not for being robbed, but for changing the locks, for filing the police report, for making the thief admit they were a thief. I stared at the messages, all that manipulation, all that pain, all that work, and the only thing they could feel was their own embarrassment. I closed the app. I muted the group chat, permanently. I went to my bedroom. I opened the journal I keep for Dr. Alvarez. I wrote one line. An announcement is not accountability. Their embarrassment is not my shame. I did not engage in the digital bonfire. I did not reply to the Northwood Collective. I did not defend myself against the accusations of being shameful or cruel. My response was quieter, colder, and far more permanent. I am an operations manager. When a system is breached, you do not yell at the breach. You document it, you contain it, and you create new protocols to ensure it never happens again. My first protocol was internal. I met with Sal and the Harbor Heights building manager. I provided them with a clean, summarized timeline, omitting the emotional family drama and focusing only on the facts. Subject A, Candace, gained access via unauthorized presence during a maintenance call. Subject B, Marla, acted as accomplice. Stolen key fob, now deactivated, was used. Multiple listening devices were planted. All subjects were identified on camera trespassing on Saturday, November 8th. They were appalled. The building manager was terrified of the liability. What do you need, Ms. Northwood? An official internal-only incident report, I said. I want it logged in the building's permanent records that these 4 individuals, and I gave them the full legal names, are not permitted on this property. They are not to be allowed as guests. They are not to be buzzed in. They are to be considered a security risk. If they appear, staff is to call the West Haven police and cite this report. By the end of the day, it was done. I had, in effect, put a restraining order on them from the building itself. My second protocol was external. Nora's 72-hour deadline for the settlement had passed. They had refused to sign. I did not have Nora send a threat. I did not escalate. I simply sent one last email, from my personal account, to the 4 of them. The subject line was, "Final documentation for your records." The email was polite. It was the kind of email I would send to a vendor who had failed to meet a deadline. Dear Sharon, Marla, Candace, Anna, and Bryce, this email is to confirm that as of noon on November 12th, you have collectively refused the terms of the civil settlement agreement proposed by my counsel. For your records, and to ensure there is no confusion moving forward, I am attaching a final summary of the events to which you have declined to respond. This summary includes a log of the unauthorized entry into my apartment on October 28th, a log of the package delivery signed for by Candace Northwood at my address, containing contraband electronics, a log of the theft of my spare key fob, a complete time-stamped log of the illegal entry on November 8th, photographic evidence of the 2 listening devices removed from my premises, photographic evidence of the broken seal on the private document, serial number RRN001, removed from my locked safe. The original settlement offer is now permanently withdrawn. This email will serve as my final, direct communication with you. All future correspondence must be directed to my legal counsel, Nora Diaz. I attached the unsigned, voided settlement. I attached a single, clean PDF of the evidence summary, and I hit send. It was not an attack. It was a ledger. It was a receipt for all the pain I had paid for and was now returning. The response was not what I expected. It didn't come from my mother, or Candace, or Marla. It came from a cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years, a loud, belligerent man-child named Kevin, who was part of the extended family's social media cloud. Sometime on Friday morning, my phone started buzzing with notifications from platforms I barely use. Friends from high school, people from my old life in Maple Ridge. Riley, what is going on? Is this real? Kevin had taken my email, not the whole thing, just one page from the evidence summary, the part listing his mother's name, Marla, and his cousin's name, Candace. He had taken a screenshot, conveniently cropping out the part about the wiretaps and the stolen key. He had posted it on his social media, and he had written a caption, a long, self-righteous, misspelled tirade. "This is what my family does," he wrote. "My cousin Riley, who thinks she's better than everyone, moves to the big city and tries to sue her own mother and aunt. She sends this crazy email accusing them of visiting her. This is what happens when you forget where you come from. She's trying to extort her own family, who was just worried about her. Some people are just sick." He had tagged me. He had tagged everyone he could think of. It was the move I hadn't anticipated. The character assassination card. The she's crazy and hysterical narrative. My first instinct was to fight, to post the video, to post the audio, to post the picture of the bug I'd pulled from under the TV. But I'm an operations manager. You don't respond to a chaotic attack with more chaos. You let the attacker expend their energy, and then you use their own momentum against them. I did nothing. I didn't reply. I didn't comment. I didn't even block him. I didn't have to. I had, months ago, when I first moved to West Haven, set all my social media to the highest possible privacy settings. I'd curated my friends list down to the bone. Kevin's post was visible to me, but as I checked with Nora, his public post was only visible to our small circle of mutual acquaintances, and that circle was where the narrative died. For an hour, Kevin's post got traction. People were shocked. They were disgusted. "I can't believe she'd do that to your mom. Kev, family is family. You don't sue them." And then, at 3:14 p.m., a new comment appeared. It was from Aunt Marla. Her comment was not long. It was not angry. It was the simple, exhausted truth. "Kevin, you need to take this down. What your cousin is saying is true. I did enter her home without her permission. I took a photo. I violated her privacy. This is my fault, not hers. She is not wrong." The comment section went silent. You could feel the digital record scratch. Marla, the repentant, had just torpedoed her own son's narrative. And then, the tide didn't just turn, it became a tsunami. A woman I had gone to high school with, someone I hadn't spoken to in a decade, replied to Marla's comment. "Wait, are we talking about Sharon and that family? Because I remember in 12th grade, Candace borrowed my mom's credit card and forgot to give it back. My mom had to call the police." Another comment, from a former neighbor in Maple Ridge. "Is this the same family that borrowed my address for a car registration? I got a summons for their unpaid parking tickets for 6 months." A third, a fourth. "This sounds like them. My brother worked with Riley at that first job. He said she was always paying for her mom's emergencies. We all thought it was sad. Riley? She's the most responsible person I know. If she's sending legal letters, you'd better believe she has receipts." Kevin's post, the one meant to shame me, had backfired spectacularly. It had become a public, crowdsourced ledger of my family's entire history of financial and social vampirism. By 5 p.m., the post was deleted. The digital silence that followed was total. But the real-world consequences were just beginning. Candace, humiliated and furious, had her bridal shower Facebook group blow up. People were demanding to know if the gifts they were buying were just going to pay off her mother-in-law's debts. She panicked, and she did something monumentally stupid. She called Nora. She didn't just call, she screamed. She threatened to sue Riley for slander. She threatened to sue Nora for harassment. Nora, as she later told me, just put her on speakerphone and took notes. "Ms. Northwood," Nora said, her voice a calm, freezing cold razor. "I am Riley's legal counsel. I would welcome a lawsuit. It's called discovery. It would mean I would get to, under oath, depose you, your mother, your aunt, and your uncle. I would get to subpoena your bank records, your phone records, and the internal security footage from Harbor Heights. So please, please, go ahead and file. You would be doing my job for me." Candace hung up. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place the next Monday. I received an email. It was not from my family. It was from a Pastor John, the administrator for the Family in Need Fund at my mother's church. It was polite, formal, and deeply concerned. Dear Ms. Northwood, we are in receipt of an aid application from your mother, Sharon Northwood. In her application, she has made several serious claims about you abandoning her in a time of financial distress. We are, of course, doing our due diligence. We reached out to the management at Harbor Heights, where she claimed you lived, just to verify her claims. They were not forthcoming. They instead sent us a security report, a very detailed security report. I could feel Sal's hand in this. He hadn't just verified a story, he had provided the counter-narrative. This report, Ms. Northwood, the pastor continued, lists your mother as a security risk for trespass and attempted theft. It details a multi-week operation that is, frankly, deeply criminal. We are, of course, denying her application in full and are now considering our own next steps regarding her attempt to defraud our charity. My mother's desperate, last-ditch plan to paint me as the villain had failed. She hadn't just lost the $20,000, she had been caught. The fallout was complete, the operation was over. That same afternoon, my boss at Blue Canyon called me into his office. "Riley," he said, not looking up from a set of blueprints, "I've been reviewing your performance since the West Haven transfer. You're efficient, you're clean, you run a tight ship, but I'll be honest, I was on the fence about the new project." My heart sank. "Sir?" "This," he said, and he tapped a file on his desk. It was my own HR report. I had been forced to file one, just in case my family tried to contact me at work. You had a compromised asset situation at your home. You handled it. Yes, sir, I did. You documented it. You looped in building security. You created a legal firewall. You did not let it bleed into your work. You protected the perimeter. You handled it with professional, quiet, ruthless efficiency. He looked up at me. That's what I need for the new build-out. I'm putting you in charge of the new Tacoma warehouse. It's a $50 million project. I need someone who knows how to protect a perimeter. I walked out of his office with a promotion. That night, I did two things. First, I called a financial advisor and set up a consultation. Then, I went online and purchased a personal liability insurance policy, the kind that includes legal counsel services. I found a secure third-party cloud-based evidence storage service, the kind lawyers use for discovery, and I uploaded the entire Operation Northwood file, all of it, the video, the audio, the texts, the emails. It was all there, safe, redundant, waiting. I stood on my balcony, the one Marla had posted. I looked out at the lights of the harbor, the ships, my ships. I had won. I had, by every metric, won. But I knew my family. I knew my mother. They did not know how to lose. They only knew how to regroup. I sipped my tea, and I prepared myself for the final night, just in case they had one last, desperate hand to play. It was a week of absolute, deafening silence. The digital bonfire had burned itself out. Kevin's post was a memory. Candace was silent. My mother was silent. I knew this was not peace. It was a cold war. They had lost the public battle. They had lost the church aid. And they were now, all of them, in a state of mutual assured destruction. The final communication came, as I knew it must, from my mother. It was an email, not a call, not a text, an email, sent at 2 a.m. Subject: We need to talk. Riley, this has gone on long enough. This mess you have made has hurt this family. You have hurt your aunt. You have hurt your cousin. You have hurt me. We are not going to do this over phones or with your lawyers. We will come to your apartment on Saturday night, at 7. We will sit down. We will have a final conversation, as a family, and you will listen. It was not a request. It was a summons, a command performance. I read the email over my morning coffee. They were going to come to my apartment, back to the scene of the crime, back to the place they had a key for, or thought they did. They were coming to my territory, to my fortress, to reestablish their dominance. I smiled, and I typed back, "You're right. It's time to talk. I will see you on Saturday at 7 p.m. I hit send. Then I picked up my phone and called Sal. Sal, it's Riley. They've just confirmed the final meeting. Your apartment? That's what they think, I said. But I'm not having this conversation in my home. I want the community room, on the top floor. And I want you there, and Diego. I don't want them in uniform. I just want them present, as building staff for the private event. The Sky Lounge? Sal said. I could hear the smile in his voice. Excellent choice, Ms. Northwood. It has a state-of-the-art, high-definition camera system, 4 angles, all recording. That's the one, I said. Saturday, 7 p.m. I was in the Sky Lounge, a large, sterile room with floor-to-ceiling windows and beige, corporate furniture. It was the kind of room used for awkward condo board meetings. I had arrived at 6:30. Sal and Diego were already there, dressed in black polo shirts with the Harbor Heights logo. They were at a small bar, pretending to stock glasses. I sat at the head of a long, heavy oak conference table. At 7:05, the elevator chimed. The doors opened. My mother, Candace, Marla, Bryce. They strode in, all 4 of them, a phalanx of resentment. My mother was in the lead. She was dressed up, as if for a funeral or a court date. She saw me, at the head of the table. She saw the room. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't the plan. What is this? She snapped. Why are we in this room? I said your apartment. This is a neutral site, Mom, I said, my voice calm. I gestured to the chairs. Please, sit. And who are they? She said, jerking her chin at Sal and Diego. Building staff, I said. They're here to make sure the meeting isn't disturbed. She sneered, but she sat. The others followed, taking seats far down the table, a clear line of us versus her. There was a long, terrible silence. My mother broke it. She placed her hands flat on the table. This ends tonight, she said. This war you've declared, it's over. You have shamed us. You have slandered us. But we are your family. And family, she said, her voice rising with that old, false, righteous power. Family is for leaning on, whether you like it or not. You are a part of this body, and you will support it. It was her thesis, her life's argument, that I was not a person, but a resource, a limb. I let her words hang in the air. I looked at Sal. He gave a tiny, imperceptible nod. The cameras were rolling. Thank you for clarifying, I said. I reached into my bag on the floor. I pulled out a small, black, hard-sided case. I placed it on the table. It made a solid, heavy thud. I opened it. Inside, nestled in foam, were 4 items. I took out the first, a silver USB drive. This, I said, is the high-definition video from my bedroom camera, showing Candace and Mom breaking into my safe. Candace went pale. I took out the second, a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was the torn, gold-sealed envelope. Serial number, RRN. This, I said, is the evidence of the theft. I took out the third, a small, black plastic rectangle. And this, I said, is just one of the microphones you planted in my home. Marla made a small, choked sound. I took out the final item, a thick-bound legal document, Nora's unsigned settlement. And this, I said, is the civil agreement you all refused to sign. I pushed the 4 items into the middle of the table, the USB, the envelope, the bug, the contract. You're right, Mom, I said, my voice as level as the tabletop. Family is for leaning on, but you weren't leaning. You were burgling. You weren't asking for support. You were committing felonies. I am not here, I said, my voice dropping. To sue the past. I've already processed it. I'm just here to protect the present. What? What do you want, Riley? It was Marla, her voice a terrified whisper. It's very simple, I said. The offer is back on the table. For the next 10 minutes. We have 2 building staff here as witnesses. You sign the agreement, It's the same one Nora sent. You agree to never contact me again. You agree to never come within 500 feet of this building. You agree to never use my name or my address for any financial reason, ever. And, I said, looking directly at Marla and my mother, you will both co-sign a new, public statement, not just an apology, but a full admission of the trespass and the attempt to defraud the church. My mother looked at me, and she laughed. It was not a nice sound. It was a cold, sharp, cracking sound. You think, she said, you think you can sit here with your toys and your waiters, and you can blackmail me? Your own mother? She stood up. The chair scraped loudly on the floor. You are nothing, she hissed. You are an ungrateful, pathetic child. We are leaving. I am done with this. I am done with you. She turned. Bryce and Candace stood up with her. A united front. You're right, I said. You are done. My mother froze. Sal, no longer stocking glasses, stepped forward. He was holding a sheaf of papers. Ma'am, Sal said, his voice pure, professional courtesy. Before you leave, I have been authorized to inform you that as of 9 a.m. this morning, your name and the names of your associates have been added to a temporary civil trespass injunction filed with the West Haven District Court. What? Candace said. It means, Sal continued, that you are no longer legally permitted on this property. Your final talk was your last, sanctioned visit. By refusing to sign this agreement, you have declined the civil settlement. By attempting to leave, you are now officially, and in violation of a court order, trespassing. You can't do this, Bryce bellowed, his face turning red. Candace rounded on me, her face a mask of pure reptilian fury. This is about that money, isn't it? You, she was sputtering. You set us up. If we had just gotten that stupid envelope, if we had just gotten the money, we wouldn't have even needed to ask the church. This is all your fault. She said it all, right into the air, right in front of the witnesses, right in front of the camera. A confession, a full, angry, public confession. Diego, the other waiter, just sighed and made a note on a small pad. My mother looked at Candace, her eyes wide with horror. She had just blown their last, pathetic defense. A pen slid across the table. It was Aunt Marla. She was shaking so badly she could barely stand. She had not gotten up. She had grabbed a pen from the center of the table. She pulled the unsigned agreement toward her. She fumbled, found the last page, and with a shaky, spidery hand, she signed her name. Marla, no, my mother screamed. It's over. Sharon, Marla whispered, tears streaming down her face. It's over. He has a camera. I can't go to jail. She pushed the document away and buried her face in her hands. My mother looked at Marla. She looked at Candace, who was now silent, her face a mask of dawning, idiotic horror. She looked at Bryce, who was just staring at his hands. And then she looked at me. And in her eyes, for the first time in my entire life, I saw recognition. She saw me, not her daughter, not her asset, but a foreign, competent, cold-blooded opponent who had just, unequivocally, won. The audience wasn't her family, who she could manipulate. It was building staff, with notepads, and cameras, and legal papers, and they did not believe her. She did not sign. She turned, her back rigid. She said nothing. She grabbed her purse. Ma'am, Sal said, his voice flat. She ignored him. She walked, with all the dignity she could muster, to the elevator. Candace and Bryce, like two lost, stupid children, scrambled to follow her. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. Ma'am, Sal said again, I'm required to serve you. My mother just stared at the closing door. As the door slid shut, Sal stepped forward and slapped a folded document against the glass. It fell to the floor as the elevator began its descent. It was the 12-month civil ban, She had been served. I was alone at the table, with Marla, who was still sobbing into her hands. I stood up. I took the USB drive. I took the ripped envelope. I took the bug. I left the now partially signed agreement for Nora's files. I did not say a word to Marla. I walked out of the Sky Lounge, past the bar, and onto the adjoining balcony. The air was cold. The city was a glittering, massive, indifferent web of light. I could see the port and the dark, silent water of the bay. I had not won a victory. I had just ended a war. I hadn't come here to see them on their knees. I just wanted my door to close when I wanted it to, and to open, only when I chose it to. I stood there, under the cold, open sky, and for the first time in my 31 years, I finally, completely, exhaled. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm really curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below and let me know. I'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.